Today, I want to talk to you about the second of the four pillars of the success of a successful magazine. If you will recall from the general video, just a reminder what the four pillars are. These are elements of publishing a magazine that are vital if you want your magazine to be successful. If you get these four things right, if you can master these four things, then you will have advertisers knocking on your door, you'll have readers begging you to buy copies or subscribe, and in general you will build up just the most incredible magazine empire. But you've got to get the four pillars right. So the four pillars are, just as a reminder, first of all, design, which is the visual experience. In other words, fonts, the use of white space, how you what kind of sort of layout elements you use, etc. So it's design. The second is content. Content can only be two things, essentially speaking, and that's either a picture or a word. So content is text and visuals, and it's the emotional experience. So you use very strong, bold visuals that evoke something out of a reader, or that resonates with the reader. And the same with the text. Your story must be good. That's why we have things like Pulitzer Prize, etc., because you want a good story. The third thing is reach, which is circulation. You know what? It's useless publishing a magazine if you're not going to get people to read it. And advertisers are not going to advertise with you if people aren't receiving the magazine, and the right people aren't receiving the magazine. So circulation is vital. And then the last is frequency. And simply, frequency is to keep your brand equity in place, to keep the brand alive. In other words, you can't if your magazine is monthly or bi-monthly or quarterly, then it's fine. But if you take too long between issues, then your brand dies, your equity dies. So you need to sort that out. Okay, so today's video is about content. It's the emotional experience. And essentially, this, you'll always have the original magazine publishers, etc., talking about how content is king. And it's so important because everything else goes around content. Everything else is linked to content. The popularity of your publication is linked to whatever content's inside it. The attention that you give, that readers give to advertisers, is linked to how you package it with what kind of content you're packaging it with, etc. So first of all, a word of warning: do not put content in that is going to offend your reader. For example, if you have a beauty magazine, just as an example, then don't have a picture of a woman with a cigarette in her hand. Offends the reader. Do you understand? If you have a businesswoman magazine, then don't have an advertiser or content from a strip joint or whatever, because it offends the reader. Do you understand that? So your content, first of all, make sure it doesn't offend. The second thing is, try and get some kind of, when it comes to visuals, first of all, try and get some kind of signature visual that you do. So if you, whatever visual, just try and get the best photographer at the best rate, or search the image databases and find the best visuals, and try and match up everything perfectly. And try not to be too generic. You try and be unusual in your visuals. What you want is, you want the reader to remember the picture, and you want the picture to be relevant. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, text-wise, you need a creative writer. You need somebody who's really good at writing to put together your stories, etc. Because what you need to do is, you need to hook in the reader. If your content is good, and if it's resonating with your subscriber or reader or the person buying your copies, etc., even the advertiser, because remember, the advertiser, because they're in that industry, are naturally a reader. But if your content's good and it resonates, etc., you will see that people don't throw your magazine away. They actually keep your magazine. So content is vital. Content is vital. and the amount of content is also vital. So depending on the type of magazine, it will be the type of whether you've got more image heavy or whether you've got more script heavy, text heavy. It depends on, that is all dependent on the type of magazine you have, if you know what I mean. So for example, if you've got a fashion magazine, then it's going to be incredibly visually heavy. That's your content's going to lean towards visuals, because visuals are fashion. But if you have a business magazine, or a magazine that deals with accounting, or a magazine that deals with serious drama issues like social services for abused women or whatever, then you're going to have very small visuals and lots of text. So your content you've got to adapt to and make sure it suits the magazine, suits whether you've got a magazine that's image heavy or text heavy. And then the last thing to do with content is your ratio. So, and I'll do a separate video on how to price your ads, etc. But essentially, your ads are priced via a ratio. In other words, if you have one page of advertising, for every one page of that's income producing, you need one page that is the opposite, that costs you money. So, for example, you need to pay for your stories, you need to pay for whatever it is you're doing, or whatever it is you're featuring from an editorial point of view, but at the same time you need advertising to support that. So the big magazines have a 1-to-2 ratio, in other words 2 pages of content for every 1 page of advertising. My advice to you when you start out your publication is to have a ratio of 1-to-1. So in other words, if you have a 100-page magazine, which is a 94-page text plus a 4-page cover, then you've got 50 ads or 50 pages that are producing income, and etc. Just by the way, as far as pricing goes, as I said, I'll do a separate video on that. But essentially the equation is if you've got 50 pages producing, you find out what your total costs are, printing, circulation, etc. Those are your big costs, commissions on ad sales and so on, and you double that and you divide it by 50, and that gives you an advertising price that you should be charging with 100% margin on your advertising. In any event, so content, you've got to decide what ratio, how much editorial you're going to have as versus how much advertising, and I'll do a separate video on that. But essentially it's visuals and text. Get the best photos, get the most provocative visuals, get the most powerful text, write articles that are award-winning. Even if you need to go on a creative writer's course or something, I promise you it makes an enormous difference to your magazine, and it makes an enormous difference to every aspect of the magazine is the content. Don't put rubbish in your magazines. People don't need to read rubbish, really. They'll read a rubbish article or something stupid, they'll see something stupid, and that's the last time they buy or subscribe to your article, your magazine. So make sure your content's good. Happy publishing.